Welcome back to the South Stands, a Buckeye football podcast by Ohio State fans for Ohio State fans. From the West Coast, I'm your host, Zach Moore. Today is Sunday, October 5th, 2025, and thank you for joining me while I talk to myself about Ohio State's thoroughly dominant 42-3 win over Minnesota in the Horseshoe last night. Now, the Gophers would take the opening kickoff and drive 66 yards on 13 plays to take a 3-0 lead on a 27-yard field goal by Brady Denenberg. Gopher quarterback Drake Lindsey was pretty good on that opening drive. He was 8 of 9 for 65 yards passing. But after that first drive, Lindsey would be held to 7 of 17 for 28 yards passing the rest of the way. He'd finish the night 15 of 26 for only 94 total yards passing at 3.6 yards per attempt. And Minnesota would not get any help from its run game. The Buckeye defense completely shut down the Gopher rushing attack. They held the Gophers to 68 yards on 25 carries for 2.7 yards per attempt. The Buckeye offense started the game with an 8-play, 40-yard drive that would end at the Minnesota 35-yard line on a missed 53-yard field goal attempt by Jaden Fielding. But after that, the Buckeyes would score touchdowns on 6 of their final 8 possessions to ice this game. The shackles finally came off Julian Sayin in this game. Sayin was a ruthlessly efficient 23 of 27 for 326 yards passing at 12.1 yards per attempt and 3 passing touchdowns. But the night belonged to junior receiver Carnell Tate, who finished with a career-high 183 yards receiving on 9 receptions and a touchdown. Now, more on Tate in a minute. Jeremiah Smith also got into the act. He caught 7 balls for 67 yards and 2 touchdowns. Freshman running back Bo Jackson would get his first career start in this game for the Buckeyes, and he'd finish with 63 yards on 13 carries and a touchdown. Sophomore James Peoples, I thought, had his best game as a Buckeye, finishing with 59 yards on 7 carries, and that included a 33-yard run, which was the longest of his career. The Buckeyes finished the night with 476 yards of total offense. They converted all 5 of their red zone trips into touchdowns. They were explosive, they were efficient, and they made a solid, well-coached, mid-tier Big Ten team look like they didn't belong on the field with them. It was a very impressive showing by the Buckeyes last night. So as I like to do on Sundays, I'm going to tick down a short list of observations from this game. As always, I'm going to assume you watched and you know what happened, so I'm not going to recap every single play. Let's start with the brilliant play of junior receiver Carnell Tate. 9 receptions for 183 yards, 1 touchdown. And Tate had receptions of 48 yards, 49 yards, and 44 yards, all in the first half. The latter went for a second quarter touchdown to put the Buckeyes up 21-3 midway through the second quarter. And before last night, I think you could argue that Carnell Tate had been underutilized in this offense so far this season, which is a crazy thing to say when you consider the fact that through 5 games, Tate is tied for first nationally in receptions of 40-plus yards with 6. Jeremiah Smith, by comparison, only has 3, which isn't bad. Now, coming into this season, we thought of Tate as more of a possession receiver and not the home run threat that he's become. But right now, Carnell Tate, not Jeremiah Smith, is this offense's vertical threat. Who would have guessed that at any point this season we'd be saying that about Carnell Tate? And I don't think we can say that Tate is merely taking advantage of the extra attention Jeremiah Smith is getting from opposing defenses. That's definitely a part of what's happening, but you have to give Tate credit for being a big-time playmaker in his own right. He had another sideline catch in this game at the start of the third quarter where every inch of his 6'3" frame was stretched out along the sideline. He snared the ball out of the air and got both feet down for a 16-yard catch on 2nd and long. It was absolute poetry. And Tate has had catches like that both against Washington and Texas. Look, this is Jeremiah Smith's offense. We know that. The sun rises and sets with Smith. But Carnell Tate is making his own very strong case for the Biletnikoff Award this season. There's no doubt about it. He can do just about everything Jeremiah Smith can do as a receiver. And look, I don't think there's any doubt that Tate is going to be the next Buckeye receiver to be taken in the first round of next April's NFL draft. It's truly amazing what Brian Hartline is doing there. Just this assembly line of NFL, first round receivers. And Tate is the next one in line. Of course, in a couple of years, we know Jeremiah Smith will be after him. Now, a big reason for Tate's success last night was the pinpoint accuracy of Julian Sayin. After last night's performance, Sayin now leads the country with a completion percentage of 80.2%, which is almost 2 percentage points better than the next quarterback, Carlos Del Rio Wilson of Marshall. Sayin is also tied for first nationally in pass plays of 40-plus yards. Through 5 games, Sayin has 10 pass completions of 40-plus yards. He's also third nationally in yards per attempt at 10.4. And according to PFF, Sayin is 12 of 14 on deep balls this season for 515 yards and 7 touchdowns. Deep balls, by the way, are defined as throws that travel 20 or more yards in the air. At the moment, Sayin has PFF's highest grade for passing depth in the country of 98. I mean, folks, only C.J. Stroud approached that level of accuracy and efficiency for Ohio State in those kinds of throws. And in Stroud, we're talking about a 2-time Heisman finalist and the second overall pick in the 2023 NFL Draft. That's how good Julian Sayin has been through 5 games. I want to talk about the play of the Ohio State offensive line here for a second. Now, last night, the Buckeye offensive line only allowed 5 pressures on Julian Sayin. Left tackle Austin Saraveld led the offense with a pass blocking grade of 82.5. He had a stellar run blocking grade of 79.7 and an excellent overall grade of 82.8. Saraveld has been a revelation this season. Through 5 games, he's only allowed 2 pressures. I think he's well on his way to first team all Big Ten honors, perhaps even more than that. We might even be talking about All-American honors for Saraveld. For the season, his overall PFF grade is 79.2, which leads all the starters. His run blocking grade is 75.3, and his pass blocking grade is 77.3. Those are his season grades. But he's not the only Ohio State offensive lineman that's playing at an all Big Ten, perhaps All-American level this season. Through 5 games, center Carson Hinsman has also been playing really well. His overall PFF grade is 75.5. He has a run blocking grade of 74.1 and a team-high pass blocking grade of 80.8. And then you have left guard Luke Montgomery, also grading out extremely well across the board with an overall grade of 72.8, a run blocking grade of 72.1, and a pass blocking grade of 73. I don't think we've seen the left side of the offensive line playing this well since probably 2022 when Paris Johnson Jr., Donovan Jackson, and Luke Whippler were holding that side of the line down for C.J. Stroud. That's how good I think the left side of the Ohio State offensive line has been. It was another suffocating performance by the Ohio State defense last night. But funny enough, I don't know that we can say any one player really stood out for the Buckeyes in this game. They were just great in the aggregate. The Silver Bullets held Minnesota to 162 total yards of offense, and 66 of that came on the Gophers' first possession. Only 2.7 yards per carry for the Minnesota rushing attack, only 3.6 yards per attempt for Gopher quarterback Drake Lindsey. The Buckeyes finished the night with 7 tackles for loss and 1 sack, which was by Arvell Reese. Sonny Styles led the Buckeyes in tackles with 8. Peyton Pierce was right behind him with 7. Lorenzo Styles Jr. finished with the defense's highest overall PFF grade of 84.5. He also finished with the highest coverage grade of 83.4. Now, this was far and away Styles Jr.'s best game of the season. He also had a 36-yard punt return on an across-the-field lateral from Brandon Innes on a really nifty special teams play in the third quarter. I thought it was also far and away Edric Houston's best game of the season. In 17 snaps, Houston finished with an overall PFF grade of 76.6. It was really good to see Houston making an impact in this game. Now, as we know, after a very productive 2024 season where he became the primary backup to Tyleik Williams as a true freshman, Houston figured to be a very big part of the plan for the 2025 defense. I mean, he was a player that many of us felt had to play well for the Buckeyes to reach a championship level on defense this season. But as we know, Houston was injured on the first day of training camp, and he's been struggling to find his footing since. Tywan Malone has been starting in Houston's place at the 3-tech, and he's been solid. But look, Houston is the most talented player Ohio State has at that position. And as great as the defense has been, I don't think we can say it's reached its ceiling until Edric Houston is back in the middle of that line wreaking havoc. And I truly believe that he's going to get there. And I truly believe that's how valuable he is to this defense. So really good to see a positive step forward for Houston last night in this game. And as we sit here today, Ohio State is first nationally in scoring defense. They're third nationally in total defense and defensive yards per play. They're fourth nationally against the pass. Now, statistically, they're not quite as good against the run, only 21st nationally, but that's largely the result of the Texas game. The Longhorns ran for 166 yards in that game. But since then, the defense is holding its opponents to only 2 yards per carry in the run game. So, I mean, look, through 5 games, there has been virtually no drop-off on defense from a year ago. And we're talking about a unit that lost 8 starters to the NFL and its coordinator to a rival program. It's just truly remarkable. And what Ohio State has done on defense, it's a huge credit to Matt Patricia and what he's been able to do in his first year as defensive coordinator. I mean, really, Ohio State is only one of 2 or 3 programs in the country that can absorb that many losses, 8 starters to the NFL and a coordinator, and be as good, if not better, in all those areas that I just mentioned, against the run, against the pass, scoring defense, and that sort of thing. It's truly remarkable. Look, I thought this was a quality win for the Buckeyes. Minnesota, as I said, is a solid mid-tier Big Ten squad. They're very well coached. They're probably going to finish with 8 or 9 wins this season. And 42-3, I don't think really captures just how dominant the Buckeyes were in this game. It could have been worse. And what's exciting to me is it feels like this team is still ascending. I don't think we've seen the Buckeyes play their best game yet, which is got to be a frightening prospect for the Big Ten and the rest of the country. Okay, let's turn our attention to next Saturday. The Buckeyes travel to Champaign, Illinois for a date with Brett Bielema's Fighting Illini for the coveted Illabuck Trophy. Now, this one's going to be a noon Eastern kick on Fox. And according to FanDuel, the early line is Ohio State minus 15.5. The over-under is 48.5. Now, this will be the first time these schools have played since 2017. The Buckeyes and Illini were supposed to play in 2020, but that game was canceled due to COVID. This will be Ohio State's first visit to Champaign since 2015. The Buckeyes lead the all-time series 68-30 with 4 ties, and they're currently on a 9-game winning streak in this series that dates back to 2008. Now, we've seen Illinois take down a number 1 ranked Ohio State team before. In fact, it was their last win in this series back in 2007. And that game was in the Horseshoe. Quarterback Juice Williams led the Illini to a 28-21 win over James Laurinaitis, Brian Hartline, and the top-ranked Buckeyes in that game. And that Ohio State team went on to win the Big Ten and play in the BCS National Championship game. So there is a little bit of a precedent of Illinois taking down a number 1 ranked Ohio State team. Now, Illinois comes into this game at 5-1. They currently sit at number 22 in the AP poll, but they figured to probably move up when the new poll is released later today. The Illini were 43-27 winners at Purdue yesterday. Now, I spent a lot of time talking about Illinois on this podcast. They returned 19 starters from a squad that went 10-3 a year ago. They're a very popular pick, or they were a very popular pick by many of the experts during the offseason to make the CFP this season. But a 63-10 loss at Indiana on September 20th has certainly tempered expectations. I think it's still within the realm of possibility that Illinois could sneak into the CFP, but I think they have to win this game against the Buckeyes to eliminate the stench of that 53-point loss for the playoff committee. The Illinois offense is led by senior quarterback Luke Altmaier, who is having a very good season so far. I mean, he certainly outplayed my expectations for him. Through 5 games, Altmaier has completed 73.6% of his passes at 9.4 yards per attempt for 1,573 yards, 12 touchdown passes, and no INTs. But the Illinois offensive line has had major issues protecting Altmaier this season. He's been sacked a whopping 19 times so far. That's through 5 games. That's tied for 132nd nationally. Only Arkansas State and Auburn have allowed more sacks than Illinois. I mean, Indiana sacked Altmaier 7 times. Duke got him 4 times. Even Western Illinois at the FCS got into the act. The Leathernecks sacked Altmaier 3 times in their season opener. Now, Altmaier's favorite target is senior Hank Beatty. At 5'11", 185 pounds, Beatty is having a career season so far. He leads Illinois both in catches with 32 and receiving yards with 569. According to PFF, Beatty is their highest graded offensive player with an overall grade of 90.2. Sophomore Colin Dixon, who's an Ohio native, by the way, has been a solid second receiver for Altmyer. Dixon is second on the team in receptions with 18 and receiving yards with 311. Now, Illinois has not been particularly dynamic running the ball, though they do have an imposing figure in junior running back Caden Fegan, toting the rock for them at 6'3", 250 pounds. Fegan leads Illinois in carries with 79 and rushing touchdowns with 5, but he's only averaging 4 yards a carry. Personally, I think sophomore Khalil Valentine is the better back. He leads the Gophers in rushing yards with 323 at 5.3 yards per carry. But as a team, Illinois only averages 3.7 yards per carry in the run game, and they're currently 101st nationally in rushing offense. So not very dynamic, not very good running the football, and that's something to note as we look at this game. Now on defense, Illinois, look, they've been pretty bad across the board. They come into this game 93rd nationally in total defense, allowing 387 yards per game. They're 97th in defensive yards per play at 5.81 yards per play. They're 113th against the pass, allowing 252 yards passing per game. And they're 62nd against the run, allowing 135 yards per game. Now, there are two key areas where the Illini defense is actually pretty good. They're tied for 18th nationally in sacks with 15 and 14th nationally in takeaways with 10. They actually lead the country in fumble recoveries with 8. So that's kind of how this defense gets by. They get after the quarterback a little bit, and they rely on turnovers to get off the field. The defensive end, Gabe Akis, leads the Illini in sacks with 4.5 and pressures with 17. Akis is widely regarded as their most impactful defensive player. After Akis, their best player is probably defensive back Xavier Scott, who unfortunately, for Illini fans, was lost for the season after suffering a lower leg injury against Western Michigan a couple of weeks ago that required surgery. So look, we're talking about an Illinois offense that's among the worst in the FBS at protecting its quarterback and running the football, and a defense that gave up a combined 115 points and 1,522 yards of offense to Indiana, USC, and Purdue. I mean, since Big Ten play has started, this defense has stunk. I just don't understand how this team is 5-1 right now. I mean, they're above average at quarterback with Altmyer, and they have a decent pass rush with Akis, and like I said, they force some turnovers. But I said it last week, Illinois has made an art form out of winning games despite not doing much of anything particularly well on either side of the ball. Look, I think Brett Bielema is a good coach, though he hasn't really done much outside of the Wisconsin ecosystem. And, we've seen the highly ranked Ohio State teams go into Memorial Stadium against much lesser Illinois teams and barely live to tell about it. There are some history lessons for the Buckeyes in that regard. Memorial Stadium can be a wind tunnel at this time of year, and it can make it really difficult to score points. This is also one of those sleepy 11 a.m. Central kicks that you have to watch out for. But oddly, I think I'd be more concerned about this game if Illinois were 3-3 or 2-4. Because I think there'd be a much greater chance of Ohio State overlooking them in that scenario. But at 5-1 and ranked in the AP Top 25, and as a team during the offseason that many people thought was a chic pick to make the college football playoff, I think Illinois is going to have Ohio State's attention in this game. So I'm setting my concernometer for this game at a 4. I think for a road game against a top 25 opponent, it would probably be a little higher than that. But for this opponent, I'm setting it at a 4. Now, Illinois and Ohio State are two of the slowest paced offenses in the country. Illinois ranks 109th in plays per game at 64. Ohio State ranks 132nd at 59 plays per game. So I don't expect the Buckeyes to score in the 40s in this one. Again, the line is Ohio State minus 15.5. The over-under is 48.5. On the road against a decent pass rush and a defense that's pretty good at forcing turnovers, I would not be surprised if Ryan Day and Brian Hartline keep it close to the vest early in this game. I feel like we might see something similar to the Washington result here. Low scoring, fairly close at the half. But, the main difference here is the Illinois defense is significantly more vulnerable to the pass than Washington. 113th nationally in pass defense. I mean, look, Purdue threw for over 300 yards on this defense yesterday. And USC threw for 364 yards on this Illinois defense last Saturday. So weather permitting, I think we're going to see Julian Sayin, much like he did yesterday, at some point, probably in the second half, start taking some deep shots to Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. And I think he's going to hit a few of them for big plays in this game. I also think there's a very good chance the Ohio State defense is going to feast on Illinois' lousy pass protection, and they're going to get after Luke Altmaier in this game. Illinois is going to have to throw a lot to stay in this game because they just can't run the football. I like Ohio State to get out of Champaign with a 35-9 win. Okay, that's going to do it for me. Look for a recap of Ohio State, Illinois, along with a preview of the Buckeyes' next opponent, Wisconsin, next Sunday at this time. Until then, thanks so much for listening, and go Bucks. You've been listening to The South Stands, a Buckeye football podcast. Follow us on X at South_Stands.